its initiating conditions, that is, colonial violence, dominance, rape, and desire, never quite free themselves of the gendered and racialized bodies that live it. So that's mestizaje. Hybridity, I think, comes from a different colonial model. It has a similar etymology, which is, again, the mixing, but it's more botanical, scientific, even engineered. Generally, it refers to the mixing of species rather than races. None but the most racist theorists speak of hybrid people or human species. We refer to hybrid plants or to hybrid cultures, but not to people. So while mestizaje tells a history, hybridity denotes a process of social categorization. Instead of the historical head-on of mestizaje, with all its violent and transformative fallout, lived on and through the body of the conquered, hybridity more commonly bespeaks a scientific conscious project. During the 19th century, the heyday of pseudo-scientific racist theories, one of the main arguments was that hybrids, constituting different species rather than races, could not reproduce. The products of interbreeding, these scientists argued, would degenerate over time. Thus, the model of replication in hybridity consists of add-ons, accumulations, juxtaposition. So while there is a lot of overlap between mestizaje and hybridity, the former was used by mestizos themselves to describe their experience of an uneasy, violent biculturalism. Hybridity was a derogatory term imposed by those trying to cauterize the biological repercussions of colonialism through discriminatory practices. Like mestizaje, the term hybridity currently reaffirms and revalorizes that which has previously been disparaged. The theorists who currently find the term useful are predominantly from India, in Asia, right? And black cultural theorists writing in the postmodern world of late capitalism, whose history of colonization differs from that in Latin America. Hybridity in their work places the post-structuralist, deconstructive theory of subjectivity as decentered, uprooted in conjunction with theories stemming from their post-colonial and diasporic experience. No new race sprang from this encounter, even though there was sexual violence and rape. The offspring born of that crash, what they call it in post-colonial theory is always the collision. The product identify themselves with their ethnic groups rather than as a new race. So you don't have a new term like mestizo. Because of the different history and implementation of colonialism, it seems logical that theorists such as Gayatri Spivak and Homi Bhabha would write of hybridity as the effect of colonial power. The doubleness produced by hybridity does not refer to people, but to signs, systems of power, spaces. Hybridity helps explain how colonial authority gets produced, performed, and sustained. The double articulation of hybridity does not refer to the mediated space between, like Nepantla. As Bhabha describes it, it is not rooted, but works on the surface through the colonial control of space. So what does this have to do with performance? And with Carballido's Yo también hablo de la rosa. Might we also recognize in it, in this play, the effects of hybridity as different from mestizaje produced in Mexico? I think so. This play brilliantly illustrates the vitality of presence associated with mestizaje through the intermediaria. The system in which she operates, however, with its theorists, media personalities, students, business people, captures the hybridity of the postmodern experience of late capitalism. These interpretations are not organic or rooted in the body, the way the intermediarias are, or the two who dreamed. They are synthetic, add-ons, grafted from alien theoretical roots. This does not diminish their validity or persuasive power. So this is not a bad thing. I'm not saying that because it's alien, it's bad. All I'm saying it's a different model. It comes from a different place. The implications for staging, I think, are interesting. Mestizaje tends to fuse the two into the one. So you have the Spanish, you have the Indígena, but she's one body on stage. And I think it's important because every time you have a body on stage, you have a theory, at least in the Americas, of racial mixing or segregation or whatever. The intermediaria occupies a single and central role as an ongoing presence. The hybrid, on the other hand, in this play, opens up towards more and more add-ons. More things are added to the same root. So out of this crash, more and more things, more theories get accumulated. Thus, a plethora of possibilities, juxtapositions, and new configurations are possible. As the play illustrates, both theories elucidate our present, and they are neither mutually exclusive nor identical, but they tell us different things about our heterogeneous, multi-layered colonial present. Both theories, mestizaje and hybridity, rely on images of reproduction, whether human or botanical. But might there be a way of looking at cultural processes that are not predicated on reproduction? Might the play also offer another perspective on cultural change, loss, and rejuvenation, akin to what Fernando Ortiz called transculturation? Transculturation, as I said, involves a three-stage process: acquisition of new cultural material, the loss or displacement of one's own, and the creation of a new cultural phenomenon. Ángel Rama, who is the famous Uruguayan theorist who died in a plane crash about 10 years ago, wrote a very important work on transculturation. And he pointed out that Ortiz's theory is very Latin American in that it reveals the resistance, these are his words, it reveals the resistance to considering one's traditional culture receiving the impact of the foreign culture as merely passive or inferior. There's always, for Rama, the possibility of response, right? So he expands on the three-step process just by emphasizing a little bit more than Ortiz originally did, the process of selectivity. Yes, there is an onslaught of foreign material, but we are selective in how we incorporate those cultural practices into our own. So as Rama notes, Latin American theater did not appropriate the Broadway musical. What it did appropriate were the absurdist, grotesque, and fragmented traditions or techniques that reflect a sense of Latin American chaotic reality, as well as more socially oriented dramatic techniques associated with Piscator and Brecht to help change the social political situations. Moreover, when these techniques were borrowed, they were radically altered by their new context. Rosa is a fine example of the selectivity and inventiveness of transculturation. So Rama speaks of a four-step process. So let's look at Yo también hablo de la Rosa very briefly from the perspective of transculturation. The borrowings are obvious, not just in terms of the Freudian psychology and the Marxist economic theories so prevalent in Mexico around the time the play appeared, which was in 1965. There are theatrical borrowings as well. Carballido himself